Hi, welcome to DTKSS. In this current session, we are going to discuss about implementing the queue operations with the .NET applications. So in this demo, we'll cover that creating a queue, inserting the message into the queue, read the message from the queue and delete that message from the queue and delete the empty queue. So these 5 operations we are going to perform with this current demo. So first thing is we have to create the queue using the .NET application. So first I will open a Visual Studio and here I will create a web API, ASP.NET Core Web API, and click next, and here you can enter queue app demo. Create the solution and template is ready. Now we will get this default controller and model classes. I'll just remove these two classes. I'm not going to implement anything with these classes. So that default class has been removed. Then now to implement the operations like create the queue, insert the message into the queue, and read the message from the queue, and delete the message from the queue, and delete the queue. To implement all these operations, I want to implement a utility file. So that I will name it as service folder. Under the service folder, I will create one more class called Azure Queue service. Add it, then create a constructor, then here we need to create the queue client. So where we can find this queue client is, first we need to install a package, is install the package Azure Storage Queues. Azure Storage Queues. Install the package. Then you can get the reference of the queue client. Queue client, and call this as queue, and add the reference of that Azure Storage Queues. Then implement this queue inside the constructor. So queue equal to new queue client. So this particular method is expecting two parameters. One is connection string and queue name. So first we need to create the connection string. So how you can create is, go to app settings. Here you create a key called connection string, and where we can get this connection string is, go back to the Azure portal, open the Chrome, and open this portal.azure. Inside that, go to the storage account. So in our previous video session, we already created a storage account. I'm just reusing that storage account. So under the storage account, you can find the access keys. Under the access keys, you have key 1 and key 2. So primary key and secondary key. So I'm going to take the connection string of the primary key. So I'm going to pass that connection string here. Perfect. So now we need to call this connection string at this client. So how we can call is, first create a instance like a private read only I configuration and treat this as underscore configuration, and here you can create the constructor variable. So pass configuration equal to configuration. From here you can able to read the configuration key. So go to app settings, read that key value. So one thing, we are passing the connection string. Then we need to pass second parameter is queue name. So currently under storage account, we don't have any queue. Go to the queues. It is empty. We did not create any queue. So we need to tell to this particular method create a queue called D2KSS queue. So this is my queue name. So when program start running, this particular queue has been created under the storage account which we have seen in our portal. So now we have initiated the queue client, and then here first step what we have to implement is create the queue. If a particular queue is not exist in the storage account, create the queue. And the second step is write a message into the queue. Write the message into the queue. And then third step, read the message from the queue. Fourth one, delete the queue. So in this step, two things we are performing. One is read the message from queue and delete the message from queue. So first thing is create the queue. So create a method, public async task create queue. So queue dot take this value, this variable reference, queue dot create async, or there is two methods will be there. This method will try to create if already exists, also it will try to create. So there is one more method here is create if does not exist. So I will go with this one. So if the queue is not exist, then we can create. Await. So what this method will do is create the queue if not exist. Then second method we want to implement here is insert the message into the queue. So public async, and we have to, for now I'll put a void as output, insert message, give the parameter is string message. So one parameter is required for this particular message. So here what we have to do is we need to call this queue client dot send the message asynchronous of that message. So this is a await method. Since this is async, we need to pass the await keyword. For example, when this particular method, what is the response it is returning is Azure storage queues.model.send script. So the output will be task Azure.response of send receipt. Azure.response send receipt. Reference is missing, so just add that reference. Models. So return that output. So return this output. Then we'll get the response of send receipt. So when we insert the message into the queue, you will get the response of this from the queue. So there might be a scenario when we try to insert the message, by the time this queue might be not created, then we'll encounter the exception. So that's the reason always when I'm trying to insert the message, I'm going to check that create the queue if does not exist. So since this is the asynchronous method, we need to pass the await. So the first step is what we are doing here is create the queue if does not exist and insert the message into the queue. Fine. So two steps we have implemented. One is create the queue if does not exist and write the message into the queue, whatever the message we are getting as an input. And step 3 is read the message and delete the message from the queue. So public async, and for now you can take void. Later we can change the response after implement the method. Retrieve the message, and it does not require any parameter. So first step what we need to check is if queue already exists, then only we have to proceed to read the message from queue. Otherwise you will encounter the exception. So first thing is we need to check that await queue dot exist then we have to check that in that particular queue is there any messages is there or not, we need to check. So first we are going to check the queue properties of, so here we need to call that particular queue client to get the properties. Perfect. So now we are getting the queue properties. In that queue properties we need to check that if properties dot approximate message count. So what it was telling is the approximate number of message in the queue. This number not lower than the actual number of messages in the queue, but it could be higher. So approximate message count, this particular property is giving output as integer. So it will give the not exact messages is there in the queue, but the actual message is there in the queue will be higher number than what this particular property is giving. So if this approximate message count is greater than 0, then we start reading of the message. So queue message of array equal to queue messages so we need to call a queue client. From there we need to call a method receive the message async. We need to pass how many messages has to receive at that time. So what is the parameter is time span. So to read that, it is the time span. Then here string message equal to, we need to read that particular message body. So it will have a lot of information, but we are very much interested to read that particular message. So first message body. So we are reading the body of that particular message. So, and then next step is once we read this message, we want to delete the message from the queue. So to delete that, we need to pass dot delete async, delete the message async. Then here we need to pass this queue message of 0 dot message id, that particular message id we need to pass. And what is the other parameter is expected for this is prop receipt. So we need to pass dot prop receipt. Perfect. Since this is asynchronous method, we need to pass the await and return this message as a output. So what is this message is? This is queue message we are passing as an output. So return the message. So here output we need to change, instead of void we need to change as top string. So we are returning string as the output. This message is string, so this is the output. So at end we need to pass null, since we don't have anything to pass, so we'll pass null. And here some error is showing, we'll check, cannot convert. So here we are expecting array of the values, but this particular will return only queue message. So we are expecting more than one value. So might be there will be one more method, messages async. Right. Perfect. So we have implemented the receive the message. So or we can call this as read message. Retrieve the message or read the message. So in that we are checking that if the queue already exists only we are proceeding. Otherwise nothing implementing, we are just returning the null value. If queue already existing, we are getting the properties of the queue, and from the properties we are checking that the property called approximate message count. If there is no message in the queue, we are not going to do anything. If there is a message, two steps we are performing. We are reading the message and we are deleting the message from the queue. This step is not mandatory. It will be deleted automatically after 7 days. If you want to keep the message, you can keep. So this step is just for a demo I was doing. This is not mandatory. And we are returning that message back to the as a response. And next step is delete the message. So public, this is very simple one, async task. So maybe I'll keep this as void for now. I'll change once we implement the method, delete the message. So here queue client dot delete the message asynchronously. Delete, this one we have to delete the entire queue. So delete the queue if already exists. So this particular method will return the response is task azure.response of boolean value. You can see here what is the response you are getting is azure.response.bool. So we are returning that value, and since we need to return the value, so we will use the keyword is return. So the backend service is ready. Now we have to implement this at the controller level. So create a controller and call this as a queue controller. Add it. And now what we have to do is we have to generate this controller. So create a controller, and from that controller pass this reference value Azure Queue service. So create this object service so underscore service equal to service. Then we have to implement the methods. So for time concern, I'm going to copy those methods. So since they are very simple, I'll go through this. Retrieve the message, insert the message, and delete the message. Perfect. So here what we have to do is we need to add that reference. So first message is reading the message. So what we are doing is we are calling this particular message from this Azure service. That's the reason I copy paste here. We are just calling the method. We are not implementing anything here. Here also we are calling that insert message, and here also we are calling that delete message service. So to create the instance of this Azure service, we are going to implement a dependency injection builder dot services dot add singleton, add that class. So this will help to generate the instance of that class, and which will inject into this particular controller. Perfect. Now what we have to do is to run the program. So the program is up, and you can see this Swagger. So I'm using a Postman tool. So this is the endpoint of the API. So this is the local host which is allocated for the application. API and queue. So how you can get these values are, so our route address is API/controller. So what is our controller name is queue. So here in the post method, what is the post method is insert the message into the queue. So we need to pass the message into the queue. So this is the message I am writing here. Click on send button. The request has been reached to this particular insert message, and click on this Azure service, then F5. So go step by step. Create the queue if not exist. So queue is created. So you can go to the portal and refresh. Queue is created already. And our next step is we want to send the message. Queue is created. Then we want to send the message. So what is our message is, this is queue demo. So execute this, send a message async, and you can go back to the portal. Inside the portal, you can able to see this message. This is the message ID which is created by this storage, and this is the message we have been passed, and you can see that what is the insertion time, what is the expire time, and dequeue count. So if this message is dequeued, then it is deleted from that queue. So since we did not dequeue, it will be expire based on the time. So now we can go back to this postman. So now I want to read the message. So change this as get and click on the, so since the request is not yet completed, just complete the request. Okay, perfect. So this is the output has been came from the Azure storage queue. What is the message ID, insertion time, expiry time, pop, receipt, and time next visible, and has a value is true. So now I want to get the value from the queue. So I will change this as a get method and click send. So now it came to, since it is a only get method, the request is came to read message. Then put a breakpoint at this read message. Click on continue. So the message is read message. So here if you go to the portal, might be this message already deleted already. Why? Because of we are implementing two things is, one is read the message from the queue and delete the message from the queue. So two things we are performing here. Must remember, first step what we have implemented is read the message from queue, and this particular line we have implemented to delete the message from the queue. And now the third step we want to implement is delete the queue. So what is the HTTP type here is the HTTP delete. So in the postman you need to select the delete and pass the parameter value. So what is the parameter here? It was expecting nothing. Here nothing. So just click delete, then has value equal to true. So all the values, this means the request is successful, and you can see this particular queue is exist or not. Refresh. Queue is deleted already. So how it was deleted is, we have executed the code is delete the queue if already exists. That's all about this Azure queues. Thank you.